Hello, good day, everyone. This is Raymond Española or Sir Monch of Surigao del Norte State University. This is a lecture video for the course Understanding the Self or USELF. And particularly, this will explore various philosophical perspectives on understanding the self as a concept map, as a guide for you. Take note that this first part, philosophical perspectives, is just a part of an entire first unit of GE, understanding the self. After exploring philosophical perspectives, we will cover other perspectives from other disciplines, such as sociological perspectives, psychological perspectives, and we will end with with examining cultural perspectives, particularly Eastern philosophical perspectives and the Filipino psychology perspective. Okay, so let's begin. These are some questions which might help you prepare no, in exploring the topics which will be covered by this lecture video. As you can see here, it asks you, what's your current understanding of the concept of self? Have you ever asked yourself as to what really is the composition of the human self? Where is the soul, or what role could soul take on our human being, or what is the essence of human life? So things like that. What's your understanding of the concept of self? Also, because this is an exploration of philosophical perspectives, you might ask, what are some different philosophical perspectives on the nature of self? Can you identify a key idea about the self from at least two philosophers? For example, Socrates, Aristotle, Saint Augustine, Rene Descartes, etc. Now, I have here famous quotes also, and I'm sure you have encountered these quotes or any one of these quotes in the past. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. What does this mean? How can you explain this? Also, according to Saint Augustine, we are too weak to discover the truth by reason alone. Another by John Locke, the mind is furnished with ideas by experience alone. And lastly, I think, therefore I am, or cogito ergo sum, Rene Descartes. Definitely, we will cover these quotes as we progress into this lecture video. These are the contents of this lecture video. We will examine ancient Greek philosophy, but focusing on their understanding of the self. We will cover Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. We will also cover Christian philosophy by Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas Aquinas, Rene Descartes, which is a key figure behind rationalism as a tradition in philosophy. Also, John Locke and David Hume for empiricism, transcendental idealism for Emmanuel Kant, and finally, phenomenology by Maurice Merleau-Ponty. So this is the concept map to guide you. We are examining a total of 6 perspectives in philosophy: ancient Greek, Christian, rationalist, empiricist, idealist, and phenomenological. Okay, let's begin with ancient Greek philosophy with Socrates. So I have included here the pronunciation of the name. It's Socrates. Socrates, one of the influential philosophers in Western history, placed great emphasis on self-knowledge and understanding. Probably this is the lesson that he is best known for, that the value of the human self is when we are on a journey towards understanding ourselves, our self-knowledge. His famous dictum, "Know thyself," encapsulates his belief that true wisdom and virtue begin with an understanding of who we are, what can we do, what our abilities are, what our values are, what are the things that are important for us. So it really requires some level of consciousness and some level of understanding why um, what our motives are for certain behaviors. Um, on the importance of self-knowledge, for Socrates, understanding oneself was not merely an abstract or introspective endeavor, but, take note of this, it's the foundation of ethical living. Okay, which means that someone can be considered as living with his or her values if he has or he possesses a good understanding of himself. Okay, so for example, in your current state right now, if you can explain why are you here, why are you in this university, why are you pursuing your course, what are your reason, is it something that you want or what your parents want, and why are you pursuing what other people want for you? So if you can answer this question with confidence, you know that you come from certain sets of values, and you know that probably you don't want to disappoint your parents. And that can be a foundation of your ethical life, okay? That you are not living for yourself, but you are living for, for others, for your parents in particular. Now, there can be a lot of issues that you might encounter in the future, but definitely you won't be lost once you have a good understanding of why you have chosen that particular life, why you are in that current position. He argued, Socrates further argued that a person knows themselves can act in accordance with their true nature and make morally right decisions kung kailata kung unsa kita or who we are. Okay? That's why there should be some introspection all the time. Okay? Mula gani kita introspection, an internal examination of your motives. Why ngano ka naman ang imong mga gibuhat in life. The Socratic method is a manner of asking probing questions to stimulate critical thinking and self-examination. So, mauni ang pamaagi ni Socrates para i-stimulate ang mga tao para makasabot sa ilang kaugalingon. So, just continuously asking them questions and questions to stimulate critical thinking. So, murag, for example, naa sa classroom na ay teacher na patindogon ka. Tapos ang teacher, so na ay question si teacher, tapos ginapangutana ka padayon ng teacher for let's say 20 minutes. So ang benefit ana most probably is dili kung mapaulawan ka sa imong classmates, no? Kung dili ka katubag, pero kung ga-engage ka with your teacher, with your instructor, kung motabag ka sa iyang probing questions, kung pangutan-on mo develop ka og critical thinking, mo develop ka og awareness na hala kani man di ay akong pagkasabot, which is different sa kung unsa ang sakto or unsa ang dapat or kung unsa ang gi-expect ng teacher. Okay? So that's the Socratic method. Just asking probing questions. Okay? So pwede po na nidyo buhaton sa imong kaugalingon, you ask yourself, ngano man ni, ngano man na. Okay? The process of continuous questioning was aimed at uncovering the fundamental truths about oneself. Now, there is a connection to ethics here. Socrates believed that if we have a good understanding of ourselves, no, it can lead to virtuous action. Kay iyang ingon, no one knowingly does wrong. Therefore, understanding oneself would enable a person to act justly and wisely. Okay? Wala may mga tao nga kabalo sila na mali ilang gibuhat, no? So kay ilang pagtuo, sakto ang ilang gibuhat. Okay? So you have to ask yourself continuously, sakto ba akong gibuhat? So a continuous questioning will eventually make you realize kung mali ba or sakto ba ang imong gibuhat. Okay? The pursuit of self-understanding was our moral duty for Socrates. Okay? And mao na moral duty, mao na atong laong pa obligation sa society. You just understand who you are. Okay? Kay again, if we know who we are, if we know our motives, if we know what our goals are, if we know what our values are, we can act accordingly to our true nature. We can act in a virtuous manner. Okay? And that's it. No? So dili na ta aning application to modern education. Let's move to the other ancient Greek philosopher, that's Plato. So Plato is particularly known for his theory of forms. This theory posits that the physical world is not the real world. Instead, ultimate reality exists beyond our physical environment. So ingon siya kaning forms maoning ideas in our language, no? Sa pagkakaron in the current modern times, the forms are ideas, abstract ideas, perfect unchangeable concepts or ideals that exist in an eternal and non-material realm. Now, take note, ideas or forms are abstract and perfect. For example, beauty, no? Ang beauty is an idea. It's a form. It's an abstract ideal. It's an abstract concept. Okay? It's immutable. It is eternal. And also it is real and knowable through intellectual reasoning and sensory experience. Okay? Now, we have here the famous allegory of the cave by Plato. He says that the cave represents the deceptive world of appearances, while the journey outside symbolizes truth and knowledge. Okay. It's a metaphor for our journey to self-understanding. Sa inyo makita diri, so na ay mga tao inside the cave na ang ilang ang ilang understanding sa outside world is gamit aning shadow na murag mahadlok sila kay murag na ay three-headed person. So mao na ang mga ilang ideas, no? Mao na ang forms. Now, ang ingon ni Plato, we need to go outside kay kung mugawas kita, mahibay-an nato kung unsa gajud ang truth, unsa ang knowledge. Okay, so in this case, mga tulo ra di ay katao nga nagdala ng turo di ay katao ang nagdala ng mga banga or water containers na sa ilang ulo. So if we apply that to another example, so for example, na akay understanding of beauty, sa may beauty, so ang beauty is knowable kung moadto ka sa world imong i-reason out gamit kag intellectual reasoning what beauty could mean. Okay? So definitely ang beauty is abstract, perfect, unchangeable concept, immutable, meaning it's eternal, unalterable, and since it cannot be known through sensory experiences, it cannot be known through seeing. We need to know the true meaning of beauty through intellectual reasoning. Okay, so that's why ang uban moingon, beauty is measured by harmony or symmetry. Okay, so kung na ay symmetry in anything, there is beauty in that. Okay, kay mao may ilang intellectual reasoning. The immortal soul. Plato posited that the human soul is immortal and divine. Understanding the self requires recognizing the soul's eternal nature and its connection to the universal forms. For Plato, the body was a temporary vessel, while the soul was the true essence of the self. So, particularly ingon ni Plato na ay three parts ang atong soul: appetitive, spirited, and rational. Ang appetitive part ng atong soul is responsible for our bodily desires, desire for food, no? And even our emotions. And spirited, passions and drives, and rational is the truth-seeking, logical thinking. And Plato argued that a harmonious soul where the rational part governs leads to justice and virtue. So meaning, ang pag-understand sa atong self involves just achieving balance and harmony among the various parts of our soul. That is, if we can strike a balance between being rational and being too guided with bodily desires, and even our passions in life. In Plato's view, philosophical education was a process of turning the soul towards the higher realm of forms. It was an inner journey towards self-realization and understanding. Okay? Next, let's go to Aristotle. So we have here Aristotle. For Aristotle, the self begins with a metaphysical understanding of substance and essence. He held that individual beings or substances have a specific nature or essence that defines what they are. This also applies to human beings and their understanding of the self. So naay similar pod niya nga na soul na part, similar kang Plato. So kung ingon ni Plato, appetitive, sa tong isa, appetitive, spirited, and rational, para kang Aristotle na apoy three parts which are again similar to the propositions of Plato. Sa klase ni Aristotle, vegetative, sensitive, and rational. Ang vegetative, responsible for growth and nourishment, sa mga bodily desires, for food, etc. Sensitive, responsible for perception and desire, and the rational. So responsible for thinking and understanding. And again, similarly, ingon ni Aristotle na we need to be able to balance kaning other parts of the soul, no, it requires na ang self understanding can be obtained or attained in life if these faculties are known and they are controlled as to how they function together. But essentially, Aristotle is best known for this, that rationality is the human essence. Aristotle believed that the defining characteristic of humans is their capacity for rational thought. That is our capacity for intellectual reasoning. Okay? He is probably the best person who forwarded the importance of intellectual reasoning. Okay? So, ingon ni Socrates, self-understanding, you ask the Socratic method, you use the Socratic method, continuous questioning para ma-reveal kung unsa ang mga real virtues or truth na nag-guide sa imong action. Okay? Ang ingon pod ni Plato, we have to go outside because forms or ideas are abstracts and they are not knowable through senses, but they can be known through intellectual reasoning. Okay? Now, karon mas gi-emphasize ni Aristotle na being rational, being intellectual, being logical is our human essence. Okay? The rational part of the soul enables humans to think, reason, and reflect on themselves, which forms the basis of self-understanding. And Aristotle's ethics is deeply connected to his view of the self, of that being rational. He argued that human beings achieve their full potential, ma-achieve nato ang kung unsay kaya natong buhaton, ang tanang talents, ang fulfillment ng tao through the practice of virtue, and that involves using reason to find the right balance between extremes. Okay? So, na tayo mga gusto buhaton. So, let's say, you wanna pursue this and that. I-pursue nimo ang imong mga interests. For example, mahimong vlogger, mahimong TikToker, mahimong photographer. Pero, ang imong parents pod naapoy mga ginaset na mga expectations. And the practice of virtue is when you are able to use intellectual reasoning para mabalance nimo ang tanang extremes na imong ma-encounter in your life. Okay? So dili kung magpahi-pursue ra kita ng mga activities in life without knowing or without um, logical reasons kung ngano pa man ang imong gibuhat for your life. And lastly, the concept of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia or flourishing is Aristotle's idea of the highest human good value. Okay? So this is the virtue na dapat atong gina-aspire. Daw, ingon ni Aristotle. Okay? Achieving eudaimonia requires self-realization and living in accordance with one's true nature. So this is the pursuit of personal excellence through continuous self-reflection and growth. Ang kaning eudaimonia, gina-translate ni siya as happiness, pero dili ang happiness man God is dili ra pod siya as plain as you are happy. Ang kaning eudaimonia is happiness plus contentment. Okay? Kay for example, na ay mga tao na gusto makwartahan, no? Tapos naa na ang kwarta sa ila tanan. Tapos maabot ang time na kwartahan na sila pero lonely paghihapon sila. Ang eudaimonia is a state where maskin wayay imo mga richness kaning mga kayamanan etc. or waya tong mga butang na nakapahappy sa uban, you're still contented, you're still happy, no? Na you are still able to find meaning to your life maskin na ay mga absent na mga butang. Okay? And also Aristotle believed that every human person is a political animal, which means that um, humans find their true selves in the context of community and political life. So there is a requirement for people to go outside to be an active member of the community para ma-achieve nila ang ilang understanding of who they are. Tungod kay, again, they are political animals. Okay? So this is a comparison in case you need to compare the three ancient Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You may take a screenshot of this para sa imong review later. Now let's go to Christian philosophies, starting with Saint Augustine. For Saint Augustine, human nature is rooted in Christian doctrine, particularly the idea of original sin. That is, we were born imperfect. Okay? We were born flawed. And we were born, that is, being driven by selfish desires. But influenced by Aristotle, Saint Augustine also believed that we are capable of reason and we are capable of pursuing higher virtues. Okay? So, yes, capable kita of intellectual reasoning, pero because of the doctrine of the original sin for Christians, no? We are flawed, we are imperfect, and we are driven strongly by selfish desires. Saint Augustine also proposed two cities, the city of God and the earthly city. Okay? The earthly cities. Earthly cities are driven by self-love and are flawed, no? So maoning mga tawhanong kalibutan dere. While the city of God is guided by love of God. Individuals must align must strive to align themselves with the divine order, which means a deep self-awareness and commitment to spiritual growth. So, maupod ni atong moral obligation, moral duty for Saint Augustine. Okay? So, kung ingon ni Aristotle, ang atong moral obligation, ang atong moral duty is to use intellectual reasoning at all times to put balance sa tanang extremes na ma-encounter nato in life. For Saint Augustine, it is aligning ourselves to the city of God, and that is a city where it is guided by love for God. Okay? And more specifically, that is a city where we have deep self-awareness and we commit to growing spiritually. Also influenced by Aristotle, si Saint Augustine also believed in the role of the state and the government. Okay? In Saint Augustine's view, the state serves to maintain earthly peace and order, even though it is imperfect. Okay? Individuals must recognize their responsibilities within the government, guided by both reason and faith. Okay? So siguro, there is really a strong murag influence of Aristotle on the beliefs and views of Saint Augustine, pero iyang gisagulan ng element of faith na yes, ingon ni Aristotle, we are political animals, we have to participate in the political or government activities, dapat makialam kita through intellectual reasoning. Okay? So, mulalis ka jud kita sa mga tao, sa gobyerno, kay that is part of our duty to use intellectual reasoning because we are political animals. But, ingon ni Saint Augustine, yes, we must recognize na naatay responsibility sa government, but we should be guided by reason and faith in the Lord, faith in God, or faith in the Creator. Okay? So mauna nga kung ari kita sa Philippines, for example, in our context, kung mubasa kita sa preamble ng 1987 Philippine Constitution, you can see there na naay element of God, no? Na sa atong pag-uplift, sa pag-protect ng mga rights ng mga tao, sa pag-protect ng sanctity of family life, na ang role of God, no? Na atong gina-acknowledge in the book, in that Philippine Constitution. So dili ra kita kung mo rason. We also pray. We also sa pa ini we also pursue the spiritual values or kaning love for God. Kay mao ba to ang city of God. Saint Augustine also acknowledged social inequalities, including slavery as part of the earthly order. However, he emphasized the spiritual equality of all human beings before God. Okay? Na part na siya ng mga social inequalities, mga earthly cities, mga buluhaton sa earthly cities, kaning slavery. But remember, we are all equal spiritually before God. And therefore, we must recognize ang worth ng tao and potential for redemption irrespective of social status. Okay. Now, let's move to another philosopher, Saint Thomas Aquinas, also a Christian philosopher. So ang difference ani nila, for Saint Thomas Aquinas, the existence and essence of the soul, as Aquinas distinguished between existence and essence, particularly in relation to the human soul. He considered the soul to be the form of the body and that it is immaterial, immortal, and subsistent. Okay? And understanding the self involves recognizing the soul's divine origin and its connection to the body. St. Thomas also emphasized the intellectual faculties of human beings, that yes, we are capable again of reason. Okay? So si Aristotle, isa na sa iyang main agendum na ang rationality as the human essence na naapod makita sa philosophy ni Saint Augustine, makita pod na sa philosophy ni Saint Thomas Aquinas. Okay? Saint Thomas Aquinas believed that through reason and intellect, we can attain knowledge about both the natural world and divine truth. Okay? Ethics and virtue. Aquinas developed a detailed ethical system based on virtue and natural law. He believed that we can achieve moral goodness by aligning our will with the divine order and cultivating virtues. And maupod ni ang best thing that Saint Thomas Aquinas is known for, that there is integrity of faith and reason. Earlier, moingon si Saint Augustine na yes, we are also political animals, similar sa giingon ni Aristotle, but we should not only use intellectual reasoning or rationality, but we do that with faith. Okay, now here in the case of St. Thomas Aquinas, that our faith and reason are actually intertwined. We cannot separate them together. Okay, so we integrate that faith and reason are integrated. He argued that both were essential paths to truth and that they could coexist harmoniously. Okay, so we can pursue both together. Kaya naamang yung iban mo pili. Okay, if you believe na they are separate, people can choose a certain path, the path to reason or the path to faith. Okay, but no, according to Saint Thomas Aquinas, there are always paths where faith and reason are integrated. Okay, so kung ang isa ka path is being rational, being ethical. So for example, mo argue na kita for, let's say, against abortion. Na bawal i-abort ang bata, etc., etc. But we examine. So yes, no matter how good your reasoning is that really aligned to the city of God? No? Is that aligned to the city of God? So bawal ta magpili ng between and two, dapat ma-meet gayud ang duha ka values, faith and reason coexisting together. There's no need to choose. Okay? And similar gihapon political philosophy. Aquinas's political philosophy was grounded in the idea of the common good and natural law. He saw the role of government as guiding citizens towards virtue and maintaining social order. And this is the comparison. So for St. Augustine, yes, there is a belief of the dual nature of humans, body and soul. Okay. So mauni siya ang difference. Now let's move to rationalism, forwarded or promoted heavily by Rene Descartes. Rene Descartes is known for his Cartesian doubt and the cogito argument. Descartes initiated his philosophical inquiry with a method of doubt, systematically doubting everything that could be possibly doubted. Okay, so doubt is the origin of knowledge. So dapat mag-doubt kita na sa man dudahan nimo ang mga butang in life, because through doubting, that is already philosophizing, no? Namilusop po na kao sa ato pa inistoryahan, but that can be a good signal na you are being true to your essence, no? You are being true to yourself. Kay he arrived at this famous conclusion, cogito ergo sum, and kay lataan ni tanan, I think, therefore I am, which means that when people think, they get to know the world. Okay? Mao na yung mahitabo. So ang mahitabo manggod aning sa previous na mga philosophers, they were all guided by intellectual reasoning. So you just reason. Puyo ra ka diha sa imong let's say sa kilid sa street, no? You ask questions, you ask people questions, and then you ask people to do reflection. Kay mao man na ang philosophy nga gisugdan ni Socrates, no? Introspection. know thyself through introspection by asking yourself questions. Now, karon ingon ni Rene Descartes, yes, ang pag-think ng tao, the fact na ga-doubt siya and ga-think siya, that is the foundation of all knowledge. We have to think. No? Descartes posited a dualism between the body and mind. He considered the mind as a non-material substance and the body as a mechanical entity. Okay, na separate daw kaning si mind and body. Descartes believed in innate ideas. Also take note of this. Ang kaning innate ideas, mao ni ang kaning certain truths that are not derived from experience. Naapod ni similarity sa kang Plato na mga perspectives, katong forms na naitay ideas na naanadaan sa ato na dili necessarily obtained through experience. Okay? Descartes emphasized the role of reason in gaining knowledge. Despite his dualism, Descartes believed that the mind and body interact with each other. However, he struggled to explain how this interaction occurs, but his thoughts on the subject have led to extensive philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness and self. Okay. Next, we have John Locke, but this is a different philosophical tradition. Si John Locke, together with David Hume, are known for empiricism within philosophy. Ingon ni John Locke, all knowledge comes from sensory experience. So I hope you're following. Kay ingon ni Rene Descartes, all knowledge comes from thinking. So when we think, we obtain knowledge. So that is similar also kang Socrates and others. Kay ingon sila, we reflect, we do introspection, no? We make people reflect on who they are, and we make people use their intellectual reasoning para para ma-attain ang knowledge. But John Locke, lahi. Ingon niya, no? Ang knowledge ng tao, ang understanding niya of the world, ang pag-obtain niya ng values, virtues, is not through thinking, not through intellectual reasoning, but from sensory experience. Okay? From what we get, from what we hear, from what we see. Okay? So, ingon niya, the mind begins as a tabula rasa or blank slate. Blanco. We're born with empty, with nothing in our head. Okay? Walay innate ideas. And that understanding oneself involves an examination of sensory impressions and reflections on those experiences. So again, ang implication ani ingon ni John Locke, since bakante man ang mind, so mapuno lang siya sa kung unsay ma-feed na mga information sa ato. Okay, there are no innate ideas, no ideas that are inborn. No eternal ideas, ingon sab ni Plato, katong mga forms. Okay? So ingon ni John Locke, no, we just get knowledge from sensory experience kay blanco na to mind. We obtain, we fill them up with whatever things na atong mabasa, mabatian, or ma-learn from others. Locke's thoughts on personal identity were groundbreaking also. He argued that personal identity is not tied to the substance of the body or soul, but to consciousness. Okay? Sa kung unsay atong sa kaning consciousness from our sensory experiences. For Locke, the self persists through time as long as there is continuity of consciousness and memory. And John Locke also recognized natural rights and political philosophy. Kanay balik na po siya sa medyo influence ni Aristotle. For John Locke, he emphasized the natural rights of individuals, including the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to property, which are inherent to each person and forms the basis for his social contract theory. Religious tolerance and the limits of human understanding. Locke advocated for religious tolerance and argued that human understanding has its limits. He believed that individuals should be free to pursue their beliefs and that the role of government should not extend to enforcing religious orthodoxy. Okay, this is also a landmark belief na ang nasod wala dapat i-enforce na isa ka single religion, but should accept na people have freedom to pursue their own beliefs. Okay, and yeah, you can read that one. Now, another empiricist na philosopher is David Hume. So, medyo similar po sila ani ni John Locke na all knowledge derives from sensory experiences because he believes that ang atong knowledge are from impressions, kaning mga perceptions nato sa kalibutan. Okay? This approach challenged previous rationalist and metaphysical conceptions of human beings. And particularly, si David Hume ga-forward ng skepticism. Okay? So medyo similar po ni kang Rene Descartes. So ingon ni Rene Descartes, we need to doubt. Pero kani si David Hume ingon siya, we need to be skeptical. Okay? So for example, he famously denied the existence of a permanent unified self, asserting that the self is just a bundle of perceptions. So mauna ang iyang giingon nga bundle theory. Okay. According to Hume, we never directly experience a stable self. Rather, we experience a continuous flow of sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Kana lang. Bundle of impressions, bundle of perceptions. O na iyang diingon nga ang self is not really about body and soul, but it's about our continuous na flow of sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Okay, no such thing as body and soul. Now, this radical view, syempre, na po siya influence later sa mga other disciplines such as psychology and cognitive science. And again, this is similar sa iyang skepticism na we need to be skeptical. Hume also examined that the nature of causality and the problem of induction, always questioning kay dapat mahimo natong habit of thought na ang kaning mahimong skeptical. Hume's moral philosophy was based on sentiment rather than rational deduction, and so on. And religious skepticism na we need to be skeptical sa mga religious beliefs, no? And he critically examined the arguments for the existence of God, etc. So these are the comparisons. Again, Rene Descartes is a rationalist, John Locke and empiricist. John Locke and David Hume are empiricists. Unsay difference aning duha that kaning rationalist ang atong foundation ng ato existence is kaning self-awareness or the ability to think, no? However, kaning si John Locke and David Hume, ang foundation nato sa existence and understanding is ang kaning sensory experience. Okay? Now let's move to, I think this is second to the last na philosopher, Emmanuel Kant. Emmanuel Kant is known for his transcendental idealism. No? His philosophy is characterized by his doctrine of transcendental idealism. He believed that humans can never know things as they are in themselves, but only as they appear to us. Okay, this distinction leads to a complex understanding of the self, where the true nature of the self is beyond direct experience. So this is kind of a response to empiricism. Okay. Categories of understanding. Kant argued that the mind plays an active role in shaping our experience using innate categories of understanding. Okay, so let me emphasize that. For Kant, we have an active role. We have an active role in shaping our experience. Okay, so Kaning categories of understanding, for example, causality and substance, are not derived from experience, but we structure it. Kita ga-create ng understanding nato. Okay? So this is also unique na perspective na dili kung nagbase sa experience alone, but nagbase sa kung unsay atong pag-shape aning atong experience. Kant's moral philosophy emphasizes the importance of reason, duty, and autonomy. He argued that individuals should act according to universal moral laws that they could will for themselves. Kant's famous ethical principle, the categorical imperative, guides moral action by demanding that one act according to principles that could be willed as universal laws. And Kant sought to reconcile human freedom and deterministic laws of nature. He believed that while the phenomenal world is governed by causality, the noumenal self, the self as it is in itself, is free. Okay. And yeah. And lastly, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, known for phenomenology of perception. He places perception at the core of human experience. Similar to David Hume, similar to John Locke, he argued that the body is not a mere object among objects, but the very basis of our experience and understanding of the world. In this sense, the body is intertwined with the self. Okay. So also Maurice Merleau-Ponty is known for embodied consciousness or the idea of embodiment. No, na ang ato consciousness is intertwined with our body. Kaya ang consciousness manggod na concept for Merleau-Ponty is the idea of soul. So consciousness embodied or soul intertwined with the body. He emphasized the lived experience of the body and how it shapes our perceptions, thoughts, and interactions with the world. So mauna ni, ako na mention, the intertwining of the self and world. Merleau-Ponty proposed that the self is not isolated from the world, but it is interwoven with it. Kaya nga naman, kaya mo man na intertwined man ang consciousness ng world and ng body. Okay? The body is our way of being in the world, and the world is not just a plane, is not just an external object, but part of our existential experience. This challenges traditional dualistic notions of mind and body, or katong kang Rene Descartes na understanding. And also, Maurice engaged with political and ethical issues, emphasizing human engagement with others in the world. Okay, so nag-advocate po siya ng responsible, socially engaged self na kanang reflect on issues of power, responsibility, and human dignity. Okay, so these are the comparison. This is the comparison of Emmanuel Kant and Maurice Merleau-Ponty. Okay, transcendental self, not directly knowable. Okay, interplay between reason and sensory experience, but in the case of Merleau-Ponty, embodied nature of consciousness. Okay, what are our key takeaways? What can we get from this presentation, from this lecture video? First, when it comes to understanding the self based on different philosophical traditions, there are a lot of perspectives, okay, which can go together, but which can also kanang go against one another. So naay Socratic introspection, knowing themselves, and also Hume's bundle theory na there's no need to know ourselves because we are just a flow of sensation. So naay diverse views of the self. And also, ang mga philosophers naapod sila laing-laing understanding of the mind and body. No? For Descartes, separate mind and body. Dualistic. For Merleau-Ponty, embodied. Okay? Na together intertwined na sila. And also, ang kaning mga philosophers, they also explored various moral ethical considerations. So, and yeah, kaning na ay emphasis on moral obligations. Ang kaning rational and empirical views, naapod sila lain-lain na view, no? Si John Locke and Hume, empirical, and si Descartes, rational. So unsa man jud ang tao, you might ask now, if mo engage mo, mag-focus lang mo anang rationalism and empiricism, asa man nagikan ang understanding nato of ourselves? Is it through our own application of logic, our own application of intellectual reasoning, or nagikan simply or plainly sa sensation, experience, perception, impressions? Okay? And fifth, social and political dimensions. I think mao ni ang tema na medyo dili mawaya sa napuyo ka philosophers na atong na-cover in this lecture video, na yes, na atay ang atong self na ay political dimension. We need to be active citizens ng atong political community na atay obligation sa government. Okay? So, gina-emphasize na ni Plato, gina-emphasize na ni Aristotle, pero ingon ng Christian philosophers, nila ni Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas Aquinas, na yes, padayon kita sa pagka-active sa atong political communities, but they should come with faith. Okay, dili lang kung puro debate with reason, ka-bright, puro ra kan ka-bright. No, dapat na gihapoy alignment sa city of God. Okay? And syempre, ang religious and spiritual aspects. And yes, we conclude this lecture video with these thoughts. The exploration of the self as revealed through the diverse philosophies underscores the complex nature of human understanding. Ang kada philosopher na ay unique na mga perspective, and the legacy of these thinkers continues to resonate, challenging us to engage critically with our own understanding of the self and inspiring continued inquiry and reflection in our ever-evolving world. Okay. Now, these are questions for you for self-reflection, and I invite you to take a screenshot of this and answer these questions, because you might be asked to answer these questions in class. Thank you for listening.